Passengers screamed and scattered as Shadow, the German Shepherd, lunged toward the gray suitcase with a violence no one had ever seen. His teeth bared, claws scraping against the polished floor, eyes wild with terror. Officers shouted, "Get back! Clear the area!" The suitcase sat motionless on the inspection table, but something inside it wasn't still. Shadow threw his entire body against the luggage, howling with a desperation that pierced through the terminal's chaos. His handler tried to pull him back, but Shadow refused, clawing at the zipper, barking frantically as if every second mattered, as if someone was running out of time. Everyone thought the dog had lost his mind. Officer Ethan Brooks rushed forward, gripping Shadow's vest. "Easy, boy. Stand down." But Shadow wouldn't listen. He kept barking louder, harder, scratching at the fabric like he was trying to rip it open himself. Officer Anna Collins approached cautiously, hand hovering over the zipper. "Who owns this luggage? Step forward now." No one did. The security team surrounded the bag in a tight circle. Passengers whispered from behind metal barriers. "Is it a bomb? Drugs? Some kind of weapon?" But no one had an answer. And when officers finally unzipped that suitcase, the entire airport fell silent. Because what they found inside was more shocking, more heartbreaking than anything they could have imagined. Stay with us because this story will leave you absolutely stunned. Before we reveal what was inside, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. And I'm really curious, where are you watching from right now? Drop your country or city in the comments below. I love seeing how far these incredible stories travel across the world. The morning had started like any other at the bustling international airport. Sunlight flooded through the massive glass windows, casting golden reflections across the polished terminal floors. Rolling suitcases echoed against gleaming tiles, departure announcements crackled overhead, and travelers rushed in every direction as if the entire world depended on their footsteps. It was the kind of morning where everything felt predictable, almost routine. Officer Ethan Brooks stood beside his trusted K-9 partner, Shadow, watching the steady stream of passengers flow past the security checkpoint. Shadow, an elite German shepherd with sharp amber eyes and a thick black and tan coat, sat perfectly still in his K-9 unit vest, scanning faces, bags, and movements with a focus that no human could match. His ears twitched with every sound, yet he waited patiently for Ethan's next command. "Another busy one," Officer Anna Collins muttered as she joined Ethan at the checkpoint, clipboard in hand. "Feels like half the country decided to fly today." Ethan chuckled, his eyes never leaving the crowd. Holiday season kicking in. Everyone's racing to get somewhere. But even as he spoke casually, Ethan kept an instinctive watch over the entire area. Years of service had sharpened his senses. He could pick up nervous behavior, suspicious patterns, odd movements in an instant. But today, nothing stood out. Just tired families with crying toddlers, business travelers tapping away on laptops, and tourists dragging oversized bags stuffed with souvenirs. Shadow sniffed the air, his tail low but calm. Routine scans rarely bothered him. He handled crowds with more discipline than most officers on the force. Children waved at him from afar, passengers snapped selfies with him in the background, and Shadow would simply blink in acknowledgement, never breaking his razor-sharp focus. The baggage conveyor belt hummed steadily as luggage rolled through the X-ray machines in an endless stream. Officers checked boarding passes and IDs, scanners beeped rhythmically, and supervisors issued calm directions over crackling radios. Everything was normal. So perfectly, predictably normal. So normal that Ethan barely noticed the gray suitcase sitting alone at the far end of the conveyor line. Worn at the corners, unmarked, no colorful tags or decorative straps. It blended in with the hundreds of other bags passing through that morning. But Shadow noticed. His ears flicked forward. His nose twitched. His entire posture shifted from calm to alert in a single heartbeat. Ethan glanced down at his partner. "What is it, Shadow?" Shadow didn't answer. He just stared at that suitcase with an intensity Ethan had never seen before. And in that moment, everything was about to change. The international terminal glowed with golden morning sunlight streaming through massive floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric patterns across polished marble floors that stretched endlessly in every direction. The air hummed with the familiar symphony of a busy airport, rolling suitcases clicking rhythmically over tile, departure announcements echoing from overhead speakers, children's laughter mixing with the grinding whir of espresso machines from nearby cafes. Travelers moved in organized chaos, some rushing toward gates with boarding passes clutched tight, others lingering over coffee, scrolling phones, saying goodbyes. It was the kind of morning where everything felt predictable, almost choreographed, like the world was moving exactly as it should. Officer Ethan Brooks stood near the security checkpoint, one hand resting casually on his duty belt, eyes sweeping the crowd with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Mid-30s, athletic build, short dark hair neatly trimmed, sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Ethan carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew his job inside and out. His airport security uniform was pressed and professional, the K-9 handler badge gleaming on his chest. Years of service had taught him to read people, to spot the nervous fidgeter, the distracted traveler, the suspicious lurker. But today felt routine, safe, normal. Beside him, Shadow sat at perfect attention. The German Shepherd was a study in discipline. Powerful shoulders, thick black and tan coat gleaming under terminal lights, amber eyes alert and intelligent, scanning faces and bags with a focus that put most humans to shame. The tactical K-9 unit vest fit snugly across his muscular frame, and his ears rotated like radar dishes, picking up every sound, every shift in the atmosphere. Shadow was elite, one of the best in the department, and everyone knew it. Children would wave excitedly from behind the rope barriers. Business travelers would pause to snap photos from a respectful distance. But Shadow never broke focus, never got distracted. He simply acknowledged the attention with a slow blink before returning to his work. Ethan glanced down at his partner, offering a subtle hand signal, a slight curl of his fingers. Shadow's tail thumped once against the floor in response. Seamless, wordless. Years of partnership distilled into gestures that needed no explanation. "Another busy one," Officer Anna Collins said, walking up with a tablet in hand, glancing at the growing lines snaking through the security checkpoint. "It feels like half the country's flying today." Ethan chuckled softly. Holidays are coming up. Everyone's racing to get somewhere. Family, vacations, business trips they've been putting off. He kept his voice casual, but his eyes never stopped moving, never stopped watching. That instinct, the one sharpened by years of catching what others missed, stayed alert even when everything looked fine. Families shuffled through with overstuffed carry-ons. Business travelers typed on laptops balanced on their knees. A group of tourists argued good-naturedly about gate numbers, dragging souvenir-stuffed bags behind them. The conveyor belt hummed steadily, luggage disappearing into the X-ray tunnel in an endless stream. Officers checked IDs, scanners beeped their approval, and supervisors spoke quietly into radios clipped to their shoulders. Everything was normal, so beautifully, predictably normal. Shadow sniffed the air, tail low but calm, his breathing steady and even. Routine scans rarely bothered him. He'd been trained to handle crowds, noise, chaos, all with the same unshakable discipline that made him one of the best. He could differentiate between the scent of spilled coffee and hidden contraband, between nervous travel jitters and genuine threat. Right now, nothing triggered the alarm. Just another morning at the airport. Ethan reached down, running his hand briefly over Shadow's head. "Just another day, buddy," he murmured. "Let's keep it smooth." Shadow's ears twitched in acknowledgement. Neither of them knew that within minutes, smooth would shatter into something neither training nor experience could have prepared them for. The morning had settled into its usual rhythm. Passengers streaming through security checkpoints, the steady hum of conveyor belts, the occasional beep of metal detectors. Ethan and Shadow moved through the crowds with practiced ease, their presence a reassuring constant in the controlled chaos of the terminal. Shadow's nose twitched occasionally, cataloging 1,000 scents. Coffee, perfume, leather, sweat, but nothing triggered concern. Just another Tuesday morning at the airport. Then the gray suitcase appeared. It emerged from the depths of the baggage system onto the main conveyor belt. Worn at the corners, scuffed along the sides, unremarkable in every way except one. It had no tags, no bright ribbons tied to the handle, no airline stickers plastered across its surface, no identification of any kind. It moved along the belt slowly, deliberately, as if it didn't belong to anyone, as if it had appeared out of nowhere. Officer Anna Collins spotted it first. She was standing near the baggage claim area, tablet in hand, cross-referencing passenger manifests with checked luggage. Her eyes narrowed as the gray suitcase passed her station. She tapped the screen, scrolled through the system, then tapped again. Her expression shifted from mild curiosity to concern. "This one's not in the system," she called out to Ethan, who was passing nearby with Shadow. "No matching passenger." Ethan altered course, Shadow padding beside him. "Could be a system glitch," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. "How often does that happen?" "Almost never." Anna reached out and touched the suitcase as it passed, stopping its movement on the belt. "And look, no tags at all. Not even a name written on it." That's when Shadow's ears twitched. It was subtle, barely noticeable to anyone who didn't know him as well as Ethan did. But Ethan had spent 3 years with this dog, had learned to read every shift in posture, every flicker of attention. Shadow's head turned slightly toward the suitcase. His ears, which had been relaxed, now stood at attention. His nostrils flared, pulling in air, analyzing. "What is it, Shadow?" Ethan's voice was calm, but his hand instinctively moved to the radio on his belt. Shadow didn't respond to the question, he couldn't, but his body language spoke volumes. He stepped forward, moving away from Ethan's side without command, which was unusual in itself. Shadow was disciplined, trained never to break formation unless he detected something. His movements were deliberate as he circled the suitcase, nose lifted, pulling in deeper breaths. His posture transformed from relaxed to tense, muscles coiling beneath his thick coat. Anna watched the dog's behavior with growing unease. "Is he alerting?" "Not exactly." Ethan moved closer, studying Shadow carefully. "He's interested, but this isn't his normal bomb alert. He should sit and freeze if it's explosives. Then what is it? Shadow completed his circle, then did something unexpected. He pressed his nose against the suitcase's fabric, pushing hard, as if trying to reach something inside. A low, barely audible growl rumbled in his chest. The sound sent ice down Ethan's spine. In 3 years of partnership, he'd heard Shadow growl exactly twice, both times when confronting armed suspects who posed immediate danger. This growl was different. Not aggressive, not warning. It was distressed. Anna, pull it off the belt. Now. She didn't argue. Together, they lifted the suitcase off the conveyor and carried it to a nearby inspection table. The moment they set it down, the sound it made, a heavy thud against the metal surface, confirmed Anna's earlier observation. Feels heavier than it should be, she said quietly, her hand still resting on the suitcase. Way heavier. Shadow's growl intensified. He pressed closer to the table, his entire body rigid, trembling slightly. His eyes were fixed on the suitcase with an intensity that bordered on desperation. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't protocol. This was something primal, something urgent screaming through every instinct the dog possessed. "All right," Ethan said, reaching for his radio. "Let's run a scan. Follow protocol." But Shadow's never wrong. Anna nodded, already pulling over the portable X-ray scanner. But as she positioned it near the suitcase, Shadow's growl became something more. A whine, high-pitched and desperate, unlike anything Ethan had ever heard from him. Something was very, very wrong. But what Shadow sensed inside that suitcase would shatter everything they thought they knew, and there was almost no time left. Shadow's low growl exploded into something Ethan had never heard before. A raw, guttural bark that seemed to tear from the depths of the dog's soul. This wasn't the disciplined alert they'd trained for years to perfect. This was primal. This was desperate. "Shadow, heel," Ethan commanded, his voice sharp with authority. But Shadow didn't heel. He didn't even acknowledge the command. Instead, he lunged forward with such violent force that Ethan had to brace his entire body weight against the leash. Around them, passengers froze mid-step. A woman clutched her child closer. A businessman slowly backed away, phone raised, filming. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. "What's wrong with that dog? Is it a bomb? Oh my God! We need to get out of here." Shadow's teeth bared as he threw himself at the suitcase again, claws scraping against the metal inspection table with a sound that made everyone wince. His amber eyes were wild, unfocused, like he was fighting an invisible enemy only he could see. Anna stepped back, hand instinctively moving to her radio. "Ethan, what's happening?" "He's trained to sit and freeze for explosives. This isn't protocol." "I know," Ethan shouted over Shadow's relentless barking, struggling to maintain control. The dog twisted in his harness, lunging again, this time clawing at the suitcase fabric so hard it began to tear. Anna's voice crackled over the radio. "Supervisor to Checkpoint Delta. We have a situation. K9 is malfunctioning. Requesting backup." Within seconds, the security supervisor burst through the checkpoint doors, his face a mask of controlled urgency. He took one look at Shadow's frantic behavior and made his decision instantly. "Lock down this checkpoint. Now!" Metal barriers slammed down with deafening clangs. Alarms blared. "Everyone evacuate immediately. Move to the south terminal." Passengers scattered, some running, others stumbling over luggage. Parents scooped up their children. The once bustling checkpoint emptied in under 90 seconds, leaving only the security team, Shadow, and that gray suitcase. Anna wheeled over the portable scanner, hands trembling slightly as she powered it on. The machine hummed to life, green lights blinking as it analyzed the suitcase from every angle. Everyone held their breath. The scanner beeped. Results flashed on screen. No explosives detected, Anna read aloud, confusion creasing her brow. No metals, no electronics, no biological signatures. It's clean. The supervisor frowned. Then what the hell is he reacting to? Ethan stared at Shadow, whose desperation had only intensified. The dog was now howling, a haunting, mournful sound that echoed through the empty terminal. He threw his entire body against the inspection table, nearly knocking it over. He's not acting like it's a bomb, Ethan said quietly, realization dawning. This is different. Shadow's never done this before. He's not alerting us to danger. He's trying to tell us something's wrong. Could it be drugs? Another officer suggested. High-grade narcotics? Maybe illegal contraband? Anna offered. Biological weapon the scanner missed? But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at his gut. Shadow's behavior wasn't about detection. It was about urgency, about rescue. The supervisor stepped closer to the suitcase, jaw set. Protocol says we wait for the specialist team. They'll be here in 15 minutes. Shadow's howl cut him off. A sound so raw, so pleading, it made the hair on everyone's neck stand up. Ethan's heart hammered. 15 minutes. Shadow had never been wrong. Not once in 4 years. But breaking protocol could end his career. Could get people hurt. Shadow's eyes locked with his, and in that moment, Ethan saw it. Pure, desperate knowing. Time was running out, and whatever was inside that suitcase couldn't wait. If Shadow's reaction just gave you chills, smash that like button. Share this with someone who loves dogs. They need to see this hero in action. Comment below. Are you team trust the dog or team follow protocol? Let's debate. The supervisor's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Do it. Carefully. Anna's hands trembled as she pulled on the protective gloves, each finger sliding into place with agonizing slowness. Shadow's desperation had reached a fever pitch. His whining pierced the air, claws scraping against the polished floor, eyes wild with panic that seemed to scream what his voice couldn't say. Time was running out. She approached the suitcase, and the entire terminal seemed to hold its breath. Passengers pressed against the barriers, phones raised, recording every second. Officers stood frozen, hands hovering near their radios. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to flicker in anticipation. Anna's fingers found the zipper. Cold metal. Heavy resistance. Shadow threw himself forward one last time, a guttural howl tearing from his throat that made grown men flinch. Ethan barely held him back. Easy, Shadow. Easy, boy. But Shadow wasn't listening. He knew. God, he knew. Anna pulled. The zipper screamed open. Pink. A flash of pink fabric inside. She grabbed the edge of the blanket, pulling it aside, and the world stopped. Oh my God! Her voice cracked. There's a child in here. The collective gasp that echoed through the terminal was like a shockwave. Passengers screamed. Some burst into tears. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. Sophie, 2 years old. Curly brown hair matted against her tiny skull. Skin so pale it looked translucent under the harsh airport lights. Her lips carried a slight blue tinge that made Anna's stomach drop. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate gasps. Each breath a battle she was losing. But it was the marks that made Anna's hands shake. Bruises circled Sophie's tiny wrists like dark bracelets. Raw red marks on her ankles, signs of restraint, of rope, of something that had held her down. Evidence of cruelty so calculated it made the air itself feel poisonous. "She's barely breathing." Anna's voice shattered as she lifted Sophie with trembling hands. The little girl's body was impossibly light, like holding a bird with broken wings. Shadow's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The frantic desperation vanished, replaced by something ancient and protective. He stopped pulling, stopped howling. His ears went back, and he stepped forward slowly, gently, pressing his nose against Sophie's small hand. Mission accomplished. Now he would guard her. Ethan's radio crackled to life as his voice broke through the stunned silence. "Medical emergency. Child victim. Critical condition. I need paramedics to security checkpoint 3 now." Behind the barriers, chaos erupted. Passengers sobbed openly. Mothers clutched their own children. Fathers turned away, unable to watch. Airport staff stood paralyzed, tears streaming down their faces. Sophie's tiny fingers twitched, barely perceptible, but Anna felt it. A flutter of life struggling against the darkness. "Stay with us, sweetheart," Anna whispered, cradling her close. "You're safe now. Shadow found you. You're safe." But even as she said it, one question burned through everyone's mind like acid. Who could do this to a child? And more terrifying still, where were they now? Shadow's amber eyes fixed on the suitcase, then scanned the crowd, searching. Because his instincts told him something the humans hadn't realized yet. The monster who did this might still be watching. The terminal exploded into chaos. Officers shouted into radios, their voices cracking with urgency. Passengers who'd witnessed the discovery stood frozen, some sobbing openly, others filming with trembling hands. Children cried. Strangers embraced. The air itself felt heavy, electric with horror and disbelief. Within seconds, the distant wail of sirens pierced through the noise. Paramedics burst through the security doors like a SWAT team, their boots pounding against the polished floor. They carried a stretcher, medical bags swinging, faces locked in professional determination. Time had become the enemy, and every second was a battle they couldn't afford to lose. "Clear the area. Give us space," one of them barked. Sophie was carefully lifted from the suitcase and placed onto the stretcher. Her tiny body looked even smaller against the white medical sheets. The lead paramedic immediately began his assessment, fingers pressed against her wrist, eyes scanning her pale face. "Pulse is weak," he called out, his voice tight. "Breathing shallow. Body temperature is dangerously low." His partner, a woman with sharp eyes and steady hands, leaned in closer, checking Sophie's pupils with a small flashlight. Severe dehydration. Possible hypothermia. She looked up at her colleague, and the gravity in her expression said everything. "We need to move now." An oxygen mask was gently secured over Sophie's tiny face, the elastic band carefully adjusted around her curly brown hair. The hiss of oxygen filled the tense silence. Anna knelt beside the stretcher, her hand trembling as she cradled Sophie's small, cold fingers. "Stay with us, sweetheart," Anna whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You're safe now. You're safe." Shadow refused to move. His amber eyes were locked on Sophie, his body pressed close to the stretcher as if creating a living shield. When the paramedics began to move, Shadow moved with them, his paws keeping perfect pace. Then it happened. Sophie's fingers curled. Just slightly. Just enough. Ethan's voice cracked with desperate hope. She moved. Did you see that? The paramedic glanced down, and for the first time, his hardened expression softened. Good sign, he said, nodding. But she's not out of danger. We have to go. The terminal transformed into a clear runway. Security officers waved passengers aside, clearing a direct path to the exit. The stretcher rolled fast, wheels clattering, Shadow's claws clicking beside it in perfect rhythm. Through the crowd, past the security checkpoints, through the automatic glass doors. The ambulance sat waiting, back doors flung open, lights flashing red and blue against the morning sky. The paramedics lifted the stretcher with practiced precision, sliding it into the vehicle's interior. Shadow didn't hesitate. Without a command, without permission, he leaped inside. Ethan turned to his supervisor, his face set with resolve. I'm going with them. The supervisor nodded. No words were needed. Ethan climbed in. The doors slammed shut. The sirens exploded into a deafening wail that echoed across the entire airport. Inside the ambulance, Shadow lay down beside Sophie's stretcher, his nose gently touching her small hand. His eyes never left her face. The engine roared to life, and the ambulance tore away from the terminal, racing toward the hospital with a little girl's life hanging in the balance. But what investigators found on the security footage would chill them to the bone. While Sophie fought for her life in that ambulance, racing through city streets with sirens wailing, back at the airport, something darker was unfolding. The terminal had transformed into a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the entire baggage area. Forensic teams dusted the suitcase for prints. Officers interviewed witnesses. But the real investigation was happening 3 floors above, in a place most travelers never see, the Airport Security Command Center. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of dozens of monitors mounted wall to wall. Each screen displayed a different angle of the terminal, ticket check counters, baggage carousels, security checkpoints, restrooms, parking garages. The supervisor stood in the center, arms crossed, jaw clenched. His voice cut through the tense silence like a blade. I want every camera feed from the last 2 hours. Every angle, every frame. Find me who left that suitcase. Officer Anna Collins sat at the main console, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Beside her, 2 tech specialists pulled up footage, scrubbing through hours of mundane airport activity. Passengers checking bags, families laughing at coffee shops, business travelers scrolling through phones. Everything looked so normal. Anna's eyes burned from staring at the screens. There has to be something. People don't just appear out of nowhere. Then she saw it. Wait. Stop. Go back. Her voice was urgent. The tech rewound the footage. 7:42 a.m. Camera 12. Baggage drop area. And there he was. A figure in a dark hoodie, pulled so low his face disappeared into shadow. He moved slowly, deliberately, carrying that gray suitcase. Not rushing, not hesitant, calm, calculated. He approached the conveyor belt like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Anna leaned closer to the screen. That's him. The hooded man looked around, not frantically but carefully, scanning, assessing. Then he placed the suitcase down with such deliberate gentleness it made Anna's stomach turn. No tags attached, no interaction with staff, just a quiet, methodical placement. Then he walked away, disappeared into the crowd like smoke. "Follow him," Anna commanded. Where did he go? The tech traced the figure through multiple camera feeds. Terminal B, Gate C14, food court, restrooms. Each time, the hooded man moved with eerie precision, as if he knew exactly where every camera was pointed. Then nothing. The figure stepped into a corridor near the west parking garage and simply vanished. "What do you mean he's gone?" The supervisor stepped forward. "He entered a blind spot, sir," the tech said quietly. "We have no coverage in that section." The supervisor's face darkened. He knew exactly where the cameras couldn't see him. Anna's voice was barely a whisper. This wasn't random. This was planned. The room fell silent. Every officer present felt the same cold realization wash over them. They weren't dealing with a panicked criminal. They weren't dealing with someone who made a mistake. They were dealing with a predator. Someone who knew the airport's layout intimately. Someone who understood security protocols. Someone who had studied the system and exploited its weaknesses. And worst of all, he was still out there. But what the officers didn't know yet was that Sophie's awakening would reveal something even more disturbing. Wait, before we continue, subscribe if you're not crying yet. My cat bet me we can't reach 1K subs before Friday. Let's make her eat her words. Tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from, and did you see that twist coming? The fluorescent lights of County General Hospital's pediatric ICU hummed softly in the stillness of the night. Sophie lay motionless in the small hospital bed, her tiny frame almost swallowed by the white sheets and warming blankets piled around her. Monitors beeped steadily beside her, tracking her heartbeat, her oxygen levels, her body temperature. And 4 drip-fed life-saving fluids into her fragile veins, while a thin oxygen tube rested beneath her nose, helping her lungs find their rhythm again. On the cold linoleum floor beside the bed, Shadow lay perfectly still. His massive head rested on his front paws, amber eyes locked on Sophie's face. He hadn't moved in hours, hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. Every few minutes, his ears would twitch at the sound of her shallow breathing, as if counting each precious breath she took. His K-9 vest was still strapped to his body, a reminder of the chaos they'd left behind at the airport. But here, in this quiet room, Shadow's mission had transformed. He was no longer a detection dog. He was a guardian angel with fur. Ethan Brooks sat slumped in the uncomfortable plastic chair near the window, his uniform wrinkled, his face etched with exhaustion. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but he refused to leave. Every time a nurse passed by, he'd straighten up, searching their faces for answers. His radio sat silent on the table beside him, the world outside this room feeling distant and unimportant. Nothing mattered except the little girl fighting for her life just feet away. The door opened with a soft whisper, and a nurse entered quietly, her scrubs decorated with cheerful cartoon animals. She moved to Sophie's bedside, checking the monitors with practiced efficiency. Ethan stood immediately, his heart pounding as he waited for her assessment. "Her vitals are improving," the nurse said softly, a small smile touching her lips. "Body temperature is rising steadily. Her pulse is getting stronger." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "Will she wake up?" The nurse turned to him, her eyes kind but honest. "Children are resilient, officer. Sometimes they surprise us in ways we never expect." She glanced down at Shadow, still maintaining his vigil. "And it looks like she's got quite the protector watching over her." As the nurse left, The room fell back into that heavy, waiting silence. Hours crawled by like days. Shadow never moved from his post. His breathing synchronized with Sophie's as if willing his own strength into her small body. His ears continued their constant twitching, listening, monitoring, protecting. Ethan knelt down beside Shadow, placing a gentle hand on the dog's broad shoulder. His voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion. "You saved her life, buddy. Whatever happens now, you did everything right." Shadow's tail gave a soft thump against the floor, once, twice, acknowledging his partner's words but never taking his eyes off Sophie. Because somewhere deep in his canine instincts, Shadow knew something the humans couldn't understand. His job wasn't finished. Not yet. Not until Sophie opened her eyes and knew she was truly safe. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled in the darkness. But inside that small hospital room, time stood suspended between heartbreak and hope, between loss and salvation. The only question that mattered hung in the air like a prayer. Would Sophie wake up? And if she did, what would she remember about the nightmare that had nearly claimed her life? The golden light of early evening filtered through the hospital curtains, casting soft amber shadows across the small room where Sophie lay motionless. For hours, the only sounds had been the steady beep of monitors and Shadow's quiet breathing as he maintained his vigil on the floor beside her bed. Ethan sat slumped in the corner chair, exhausted but refusing to leave, his eyes fixed on the tiny figure beneath the warming blankets. Then something changed. Sophie's fingers twitched. Shadow's head shot up instantly, his ears pricked forward with laser focus. His amber eyes locked onto her small hand as it moved again, just barely, against the white hospital sheets. "Shadow? What is it?" Ethan straightened in his chair, suddenly alert. He'd learned long ago to trust every signal his partner gave. And right now, Shadow was telling him something was happening. Sophie's eyelids fluttered like butterfly wings struggling against a gentle breeze. A soft whimper escaped her lips, barely audible, but in the quiet room it might as well have been a shout. The heart monitor began beeping faster, the rhythm picking up as consciousness slowly pulled her back from wherever she'd been. Shadow rose to his feet and stepped closer, his movements careful and deliberate. He positioned himself right beside the bed rail and gently placed his nose near her hand, close enough to feel her warmth but not to startle her. Sophie's eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding her features as unfamiliar ceiling tiles came into focus. She blinked, disoriented, frightened. Her breathing quickened. Where was she? What was this place? Then her gaze shifted downward, and she saw him. Shadow. The big German shepherd with kind amber eyes and a vest that read K9 Unit across his broad chest. Something deep inside her recognized him, not consciously perhaps, but in the way frightened children know safety when they see it. Her first word came out as barely a whisper, but it shattered the silence like breaking glass. Shadow! Tears filled her eyes immediately, spilling down her pale cheeks. Not tears of fear anymore, but of recognition, safety, relief. This was the one who'd saved her. Somehow she knew. She reached her tiny hand toward him, fingers stretching across the space between them. Shadow responded with the gentlest gesture imaginable. He leaned forward and licked her fingers, his rough tongue warm against her skin. His tail wagged slowly, carefully, as if he understood she was fragile. "Good doggy," Sophie whispered, and despite everything, despite the horror of the past hours, despite the uncertainty ahead, a tiny smile flickered across her face. Ethan moved to the bedside, his voice thick with emotion. "Hey there, sweetheart. You're safe now. You're in a hospital. Nobody's going to hurt you anymore." Sophie's eyes shifted to him, studying the stranger in the uniform, then back to Shadow as if seeking confirmation that this man was trustworthy. When Shadow remained calm, she seemed to accept it. But then came the question that broke everyone's heart. "Where's Mommy?" Her voice trembled. "I want Mommy." Ethan's face fell, the weight of that simple question crushing. He glanced at the monitors, at Shadow, anywhere but those innocent, pleading eyes. The door opened softly, and the nurse entered with practiced quietness. She saw Sophie awake and smiled gently, though concern flickered across her features. "Hello, sweetheart. We're trying to find your family, honey. Can you tell us your name?" "Sophie," the little girl answered. The nurse waited, hopeful. "That's a beautiful name. And what's your last name? Sophie? Where do you live?" But Sophie's face scrunched in confusion. She remembered nothing else. No last name, no address, no phone number, no details that might help them find whoever she belonged to. Only one thing remained clear in her mind. She wanted her mommy. But where was she? And why wasn't anyone looking for this precious child? While Sophie rested safely in her hospital bed with Shadow standing guard, miles away at the airport security command center, the real investigation was just beginning. The walls were lined with monitors, each one flickering with surveillance footage from different angles, different times, different cameras. Officers huddled around the screens, their faces illuminated by the cold blue glow, rewinding and replaying the same moments over and over again. They were hunting a ghost. Anna leaned closer to the largest monitor, her finger tracing the hooded man's movements frame by frame. There he was, walking slowly, deliberately, carrying that gray suitcase with both hands. Not dragging it, not rushing, moving like someone who had all the time in the world. The tech beside her zoomed in on the figure's hands. Gloves. Dark tactical gloves that covered every inch of skin. "No fingerprints," the tech muttered. He knew exactly what he was doing. The footage continued. The hooded man approached the baggage conveyor belt, placed the suitcase down with unsettling gentleness, then turned and walked away. No hesitation. No looking back. He moved through the terminal like water flowing through cracks. Smooth, deliberate, invisible. Anna's team tracked him through camera after camera, watching as he navigated the crowd with eerie precision. Then he stepped into a surveillance blind spot and vanished. Gone. As if he'd never existed at all. "He's done this before," Anna said quietly, her voice tight with frustration. "Or he works here. Look at how he moves. He knows exactly where the cameras are and where they aren't." The supervisor immediately ordered a full employee database search. They pulled records of every current staff member, every contractor, every custodian, every food court worker. They compared the hooded man's build, his gait, his movements. Nothing. No matches. It was as if he'd studied the airport from the outside, learning its rhythms, memorizing its weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Expand the search," the supervisor ordered grimly. "Past employees, anyone who's ever worked here in the last 10 years. But even as the investigation widened, another horrifying detail emerged. A detective arrived at the command center holding a tablet, his face pale. "We ran Sophie's photo through every missing persons database in the country," he said slowly. "Nothing. No reports. No Amber Alerts. No frantic parents calling police stations. It's like she doesn't exist." Back at the hospital, Ethan's phone buzzed with the update. He read the message twice, his stomach twisting. "How is that possible?" he whispered to Anna over the phone. "She's 2 years old. Someone has to be looking for her." Anna's response came quietly, but the words landed like stones. "Unless whoever took her made sure no one would report her missing." The chilling realization settled over everyone involved. This wasn't a random abduction. This wasn't a stranger snatching a child from a playground. This was calculated, personal. Someone close to Sophie. Someone who knew her, who had access to her, who could make a little girl disappear without anyone raising an alarm, had put her in that suitcase and left her to die. As the night deepened, the airport command center remained ablaze with light. Officers worked in shifts, refusing to stop, replaying footage until their eyes burned. In the hospital, Shadow lay beside Sophie's bed, his head resting on his paws, his amber eyes never closing. Sophie slept peacefully now, her tiny hand clutching a fistful of his fur, her breathing steady and strong. On the monitors back at the airport, the hooded man's face remained frozen in shadow, his identity a dark question mark that haunted everyone who saw it. Shadow's instincts saved Sophie's life that day, but the mystery of who put her in that suitcase, and where her mother is, remains unsolved. The hooded man vanished without a trace. Police continue their investigation. And Shadow? He refuses to leave Sophie's side, as if he knows his job isn't finished. Because somewhere out there, a predator is still free. And Shadow won't rest until Sophie is truly safe. Shadow saved Sophie, but you can save this channel. If the story moved you, subscribe now. Let's hit 1K together this week. Share this video with every dog lover you know. Drop your country in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And remember, heroes walk on 4 legs. See you in the next story. Paw prints.